3 stories of brick, stone, and glass somehow seemed to loom over Royce and Emma. I thought this was a traveling carnival.
I'm sure there's a very clever trick to making it look so real.
Wouldn't you rather go out somewhere, get some, Mexican food? It didn't matter that he was a head taller than her, with shoulders as wide as they get. Royce rather put his hands in his pockets than let her see them shaking.
Why?
Emma's round hips swung in sync with the question. She threw some popcorn in her mouth and asked,
"'Cause I'm Latina?"
pursing her lips with sass, but also somehow smiling. She only confused him further. I mean, burritos? Tacos? He squinted in search of words, any words other than burritos and tacos. He rolled his eyes, then clenched them tight, hoping she didn't see. First dates.
How about Italian?
She slapped his shoulder. Contact. That's gotta be a good sign, right? Italian? They're selling terrible carnival pizza by the slice over there. Emma laughed, swinging her bag of popcorn toward him. It's a carnival. Popcorn, hot dogs, cotton candy, ice cream. Those big turkey legs? He pointed to one as its devourer walked past. Now you're getting it. He reached into the bag and crunched on some popcorn. Is that why you wanted to come here on Halloween? For the candy? Emma's head shook violently. I like getting scared. Nothing scarier than carnival rides and haunted houses. I'm not a huge, fan. Emma was petite, but when she tilted her head at him, she was tall as the house. Lighten up, Royce. She took his hand, and suddenly he could climb mountains, slaughter lions with his bare hands, kiss her. No, not that, not yet. I'm not scared, he lied. He paid the entry, and they passed through the gigantic wooden double doors. Goosebumps sprouted on his arms when he felt the cold inside the house. To their left, a small sign read, "Point of No Return." A dank, dark hallway led from it to an exit illuminated only by the customary neon red sign. Emma and Royce looked at each other. They smiled and shook their heads. When they turned away from their last chance at escape, they found there was a door before them. Was this here when we came in? Not knowing how to answer, Royce reached for the doorknob, barely touching it. The door swung open. Bang! Emma and Royce jumped in place and screamed. Emma's scream turned to laughter. She clapped her hands once and let out a whew! We're off to a great start! She hurried through the door. Royce didn't remember following her in before the door slammed shut behind them. It was so dark and the wind moving through the trees whispered warnings in Royce's ears. The scent of pine tickled his nose, and the crushing leaves when he took a step told them everything. How? Oh, these guys are good. Emma's smile could be seen in the dark. A certain amount of this is a room with convincing props. The rest is an optical illusion. They paint the walls to look like the forest goes on forever. It's like when they used to do it in Disney movies. Oh yeah, Bambi, right? Right. Come on, follow the path. The path wound through the trees ahead, disappearing into a mist that seemed to be growing and spreading. Following it, they came to the edge of a clearing. Emma was about to walk out, but Royce whispered, "Wait, look." Across the field, a man was running for his life, screaming for help. He was chased by a wolf the size of a man. It ran on all fours, but what should have been its front paws were more akin to hands, with long digits. Yet its claws were yellow and long enough to be impressive at a distance. The wolf man pounced on his prey and ate him alive, tearing the man's flesh and muscle with its jaws. With its hands, it snapped the man's bones and then drank the marrow. The special effects are incredible. How do they make the blood look so real? It looks black in the moonlight. The wolfman's head bolted up. He zeroed his yellow eyes on them and immediately gave chase across the field. Royce and Emma screamed, turned, and ran back the way they came, the pounding of 4 giant legs gaining on them. His hot breath on Royce's neck. A door slammed behind him. I didn't see the door. Did you? Emma was hunched over, gasping for air. No. Royce took a knee, huffing and puffing. That looked real, Emma. Like really real. I know. This place is awesome. Emma laughed and pumped a fist. I felt his breath on my neck. Yeah, that's probably like a hairdryer or something, right? It smelled like blood. Why do you know what blood smells like? Emma, I think something seriously fucked up here. That was crazy. Scented air. Scented hot air. Relax. Besides, check it out. She motioned him to turn around. The walls were stone, the floor hard wood, and the ceiling was vaulted high above them. Lanterns and candles lit the furthest parts of the room, and at its center was the cauldron and the witch. She stirred the contents, stoked the flames beneath it, walked to the tables along the walls of the room to retrieve ingredients, and all the while she spoke in tongues Royce had never heard. Evil tongues he recognized from the memories of his ancestors stored deep in his very blood. Emma, he whispered. The cauldron. Is that a human foot floated to the surface of the roiling stew. It's small, Emma said. A child. Her voice cracked. She wiped a tear away, and Royce felt his heart drop to his shoes. The witch had heard the same crack in her voice. Her red eyes turned and pierced Royce to his very soul. She began to shout her curses at them. Wind whirled around the room, knocking vials of potions to shatter on the ground, and human remains rolling towards Emma. Then dozens of hands grabbed, groped, and stroked Royce and Emma, their entire bodies violated in an instant. They gripped their clothes, tugged on their hair. Royce and Emma ineffectively fought off the invisible hands by flailing about before finally giving up and running. Running. The witch's laugh echoed in their ears as they ran until Emma saw the tall man. There! The tall man waved them over to a door of pure light that had opened somewhere in the deep dark. They ran through the door, and the tall man followed them in, closing the door behind them. He locked it with a large key so crudely made and so old with rust that Royce wondered if it was the very first key ever made. Royce and Emma fought to catch their breath, panting and heaving. Thank you, sir. That was crazy. You guys are killing it in there, Emma said. When do you all come this way again? The tall man said nothing. His skin was pale as milk, his lips red as blood, and his straw-thin hair was black as the abyss they just escaped. He walked past them, revealing the glamorous bedroom of a young lady asleep in her bed. The tall man went to her bedside and stood there, still as a statue, staring. One moment he was still standing beside her, a blink of the eyes, and he had bit into the woman's neck with a ferocity that sent blood spatter across the height and length of the wall in an instant. The woman's scream raised the hair on the back of Royce's neck, and he felt a paralysis in his body he'd only felt once before as a child, when the monster in his closet was coming to eat him and he couldn't flee. The tall man drank and drank, gulping it all down. Finally he stood. Blood covered his lower jaw. He leaned back, licked his lips, and sighed relief. He looked at Royce and Emma. In another impossible instant he was before them again, and staring at her. Royce wanted to move, to reach out, to stop him, to do something. Spectacular. Even the way you're looking at me right now? Emma's voice was different this time. There was a tremble in it Royce hadn't heard before. As though she wanted to continue believing it was all a show, but the pale, living corpse before her was hard to contend with. I mean, if you were a real vampire, she argued anyway, I'd be shitting my pants right now. That's how good you guys are. His eyes moved to the vein in her neck that pulsed with unspoken terror. Emma's hips swung, out of sync this time. Although, the way you move is, kind of unnatural. It's so impossible that it highlights the special effects. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only way. Emma turned to look at Royce for support. She touched his hand, and he remembered mountains, lions. Royce stepped forward and put his arm between Emma and the vampire. He opened his lips to speak for his lady love, but it was futile. By turning her head towards Royce, she had exposed her neck, her artery, his dinner. The vampire ate 3 chunks out of her neck in one explosive moment of chaos. Emma burst across the wall. The vampire's body convulsed and vibrated in ecstasy. He composed himself, stood up straight. He turned to Royce, whose arm was still extended between them for all the good it did. Emma's corpse slumped to the floor, the pool of blood around her growing by the second. Royce didn't cry. His face grew hot and red, his fists clenched, his knuckles white and cracking. Royce reached back, and with all his might, all his anger, all his love, all his hate, punched the vampire in the face. His fist might as well have hit a brick wall. His fingers broke to pieces, and he screamed so loud he didn't make a sound. He tried running, but every time he looked back, the vampire was there, standing over him. He never moved, yet Royce couldn't lose him. He used his hand to pick up a chair and smash his stalker over the head. It shattered to splinters. Something red caught Royce's eye. A fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. He smashed the vampire with it. It exploded into Royce's eyes. He screamed and ran blindly in random directions, his eyes stinging. He had no idea which way was what. Royce ran into a wall and fell to the ground. It wasn't a wall. I am usually able to control my urge, the vampire said. I am more than content to eat a woman in the show each night and keep it a single course meal. Moderation is how we keep a low profile, as you say, and pay the mortgage. But there was just something about your young lady tonight. I guess I was in the mood for Mexican. Tears ran down Royce's cheeks, snot bubbled at his nose. A first date on Halloween. But now that I really think on it, the vampire inhaled, smelling the top of Royce's head. Yes, Italian.